we're here to talk about the idea of getting yourself prepared for building guidebooks, whether it's for instructor-led or virtual instructor-led training. So kind of the idea of, think of it, we're calling it preparation power, right? Putting a little bit of time in before you get to actually building those guidebooks so that you're more successful. In one way, it's, part of you could consider it, part of the instructional design process, but it's also kind of falling into the project management side of it as well. So we're going to look at a couple things as we go through this. I actually have, and let me put it into chat in Zoom. Hopefully this just went in. I just put in a PDF for you. We're going to kind of go through this as we go along. This is like, it's before version 1.0 of a checklist to kind of help you through this process of putting some things together to make your preparation easier. But we're going to dive into that. Starting, the first area when we think about preparing to build out a guidebook, it's really, things to think about is like, what type of strategies are we going to be using, right? How are we going to be involving our learners, all these type of things. And so one of the first place I generally will start, and again, this is not a design document. It's really, it's more at the, kind of moving over into the project management side. But in one place, what I like to do is I like to make sure my training objectives are all aligned, right? So this is going to be going through setting up, defining our training goals, right? Like, what's the overall goal of the course? Which, if you have a design document, that is part of that, right? So we are bringing some pieces over from that, but putting into place what's our overall course goal. Looking at things like who's our intended audience, right? So we're kind of defining these pieces, and again, this one portion of it is a lot of it's coming from the design document. And actually here, let me do this. I am going to share this just so if you haven't been able to pull up that PDF, this is, some of the first pieces of this is, again, what's our course goal? I also like to list off my objectives. Again, part of the design document, but because there's other pieces that are coming in here, a lot of times I can copy these over. Or we have a lot of customers who don't go so deep into the design document phase yet. So it's a great place to kind of capture this. So put in your course objectives. Think of this, especially if you're using LeaderGuide Pro, think of this as a 2-level hierarchy, right? So what are our terminal objectives? What are our enabling objectives? Right? It's like what we're seeing right here. Put those in. So we can basically, we're capturing it and we have it in one location for when we start managing our project. And then capturing, who our audience is, what's their prior knowledge. This is just going to help us make sure we're staying on task, or whoever's working on specific tasks are staying on track. The last piece, kind of when we get into, kind of aligning our objectives, if we come down here, I like to think of this as, what type of resources do we have? What type of constraints that we fall into? And you'll notice on this checklist that I provided to you, I've given you a little bit of some hints to go along with this, right? So available resources could be, how much time do we have? What's our budget? What type of materials do we have? Some of those could also be restraints, right? If we think back, if you've looked at some of the data that comes out of ATD, in the last review cycle they've done about when it comes to building training materials, that 75% of the learning and development community feel like they lack the resources, time, workforce, budget to do their job. So keeping track of these type of things can help us stay on top of that, right? The tools that we use to build or to manage our projects can help us stay on top of that. So putting that, again, let me flip back over here, putting this onto, thinking of this in the preparations phase can help us, set ourselves up for success as we move forward. But writing it down, right? Some of the constraints you may have, put that you can think up off the top of your head, put those in. Also, what is the solution? Or what's a possible solution, right? Just because we've got an issue doesn't mean we shouldn't look at a way to get around it or to accommodate that or factor into it. So again, just having a place where we can capture that's going to make your preparation of getting ready to build that much easier. Questions so far? All right, so that's just kind of setting the stage. But one of the biggest pieces that's going to come up when we start looking at preparing is gathering and organizing the content that we want to use. So that first piece is just kind of, setting our foundation. But when I talk about gathering our content, and organizing it, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got when I first started in this industry was the worst place you can start building a training from is a blank page, right? There is so much stuff that's been put out, whether it's in your organization, whether it's other programs similar to this that other organizations or professional development groups have put out that you can pull from. I'm not saying we're not talking about plagiarizing, but there's material out there, and especially if it's in-house, there's material that people have put lots of time and effort into. Now, it may not be exactly what you need, but maybe it's 75% there, maybe it's 80% there, and you just have to repurpose it. Or one chunk of it will work, but another chunk doesn't. So how do we go through and how do we evaluate all those type of things? And again, this is items that we can come and look at. If I scroll down into this kind of checklist, one of the things I like to do is kind of capture all the different documents that are out there. Or, so in this case, I'm looking at kind of internally, but what's the document? File name, something like that. Where's it located, right? Maybe it's a physical book. Maybe it's, on a shared drive. You can capture that information. The third column that I've got in here, all right, this column here about relating to objective, and it's probably not, I got to figure out a better name for that column, but the idea being we just previously up above or on our design document wrote down all our objectives. Well, so maybe a portion of our second document that we label down in our existing content relates to our enabling objective 2. So let's mark it there. And so now not only are we showing here's everything that we have, but we're also marking kind of where it kind of fits. So we can get a clear picture of, in my fictional training, maybe there's 3 modules and each module has 3 lessons. Well, of all the material that's out there, maybe we only have to build one completely new module, or, we can repurpose everything but, a single lesson or 2. And so you're able to see how quickly or how the scope of what you have to do compared to what's already been done and just what you have to repurpose and bring up into the current voice of this training that's going to be being built. And then just a note section, right? So just giving you a place to think of it as at the big picture, and let's start breaking it down into individual chunks that we can start building out from. So capture all this, right? So as we're going through, we're getting all this information, we're putting it in a location. Then, we've kind of done this. Now we can figure out where are our gaps. It could be like that example I just gave, that we are missing just a small piece. Like we just need to build a single lesson because that's the only thing that we're really missing. Or maybe it's you're talking about, how we need to repurpose, of that repurposed lesson that we're using or repurposed module, some of the changes that need to be made to bring it up to the voice or what's needed in this existing, in the training that you're just going to be building out. But again, it's just at this stage, we are reviewing what we have and then looking at it and kind of making our notes on what needs to be updated. And then giving a place for additional content and sources. So maybe they're outside places, or this is a great place to kind of capture, the ideas of what you may need for those pieces that we are missing, right? So that one lesson that needs to be built out completely, here's a good place. If you wanted to start jotting down information, you could. So the big piece on I think this is one of the biggest pieces that's missed when we come to building out training, is spending time and looking at what we already have, right? As much as I'd love to think that what I build out is the most important thing, or I know everything, that's not true, especially if it's coming from me. But there's so much work that other people have done, and because we're generally running on a budget, or on a lower budget or on time frames, we would be completely crazy to not look at what other people have already done, who have had all this other time to build into it and bring it in. So take the time when you're preparing to look at what's already out there. Yes, you're investing time into it, but it is much quicker to review something that's already been built out and see how it fits or how it needs to be changed versus going in and building something out new. On average, the time to build out one completed hour of instructor-led training is somewhere around 38 hours of development time. Now that's factoring in looking at the design side, the actual development, building out slides, facilitator guides, all of your guides, your participant materials. But think of that, like if you're going to build something new from scratch, you're going to be looking at somewhere around, let's call it 35 to 40 hours of development time per hour of training. If we can pull from something that's already been done, we can quickly lower that, right? We start using other tools out there like LeaderGuide Pro to help us on the development side. We can reduce that as well, right? So like the average user of LeaderGuide Pro saves roughly 57-60% of the development time. So instead of being at 38 hours, 39 hours, they're somewhere at 21, 22 hours building out from scratch, right? Not even looking at what's already been out there. So you got to know what you have, what we can use, so that we can make sure we're implementing it in the best possible manner. All right. So after that, after we kind of take a look, we now need to start figuring out how we're going to be managing this. What are we going to be doing to plan? Right. Things to kind of think about this is like areas that fall into this would be deadlines, the tasks that we need to do. How do you want to do revisions? How are you going to be doing feedback? Right. And so it's obviously all these things always happen, but kind of defining it up front helps smooth out the process across the board. Right? If we come back to my little, I'm going to call it a cheat sheet, but it's really kind of like a checklist, minus any check boxes. All right, I gave you a time management section, right? So listing out any known deadlines that you know of up front, right? Like, hey, we're going to, we need to put this in pilot into 2 weeks, or we need to make sure we've got, something in our stakeholders' hands within the first 3 weeks. Just list them all out with the complete understanding that all of this is always subject to change, but putting it in, and we can kind of have a place to see it and understand it. And obviously if you're using a tool, something like Microsoft Planner or something along those lines, helps you get up into those type of things. And I'd love to figure out, and one of these days I'll sit down and do it, how to kind of load up some of this information. So maybe it is just in a planner template that everyone can pull from. And now we're all in one place and you're not working from a PDF and then dealing with Planner or Microsoft Loop or whatever, project management tool that you guys use. But capture down those deadlines. Figure out how you think the revision and feedback process should go. Kind of define it, right? So that, if you know, like, you're going to put something together and it's got to be reviewed by a subject matter expert, or it's got to be reviewed by a stakeholder, that you go and you kind of state, like, all right, if I send this off, I'd like to have responses back within 2 business days or something like whatever those ground rules are. So again, we kind of have those. And then as we're building out emails and we're kind of sending this off, we make sure we kind of have we have a place that we can reference back to with where we can think about, when we talked about feedback, we kind of all agreed it was going to be 2 days. So I can quickly give them a reminder of that. And so we're just, again, capturing stuff to make sure the whole project moves forward in a timely and efficient manner. All right, same play. If you knew tasks up front, and again, I'm not saying this is going to be your be-all, end-all place for managing your tasks, but as you're getting ready to prepare, there's going to be, kind of some high priority ones that that kind of have to happen. Let's put those down, write them down, so that when we actually are filling out, our project management software with those things, we don't forget about them, or we can add in different things. And if you want to assign it to specific people, or the start dates or end dates or time frames, you've got all those things. So as we're preparing, and as especially as you've done this a few times, there's certain things that are going to happen. Capture those down in there, or leave those tasks in your, if you make this into a template or whatever you want to do, keep those ones in there so you don't have to keep adding them in each time. You just have them, and this is our process, and these are the tasks that we have to do, and then you just later on fill them in with the one specific to the training course that you're currently building. So how do you guys go about right now thinking about your time management, your project management side at the beginning of your training? Does anyone do that? And if so, I'd love to, please speak up and let us know how you kind of go about that.
Well, we started actually using Planner.
Okay.
As our project management. So my manager will establish a project, and if I'm the person, then he'll fill out a project plan in Planner. He'll give me due dates in there, and then it'll be my responsibility to go into the notes section and then just keep track of what I'm doing as time goes by. So we've kind of committed to using Planner,
Mm-hmm.
our company, as the way we're going to manage all of our project managements. So.
Yeah, I really like Planner myself. Within that, the Microsoft environment, they've got Planner, they've got To Do, they now have Loop, and they all kind of go into teams, and so it's always good to find the one that works for you and your team, and run with it.
Yeah, we use Planner through Teams.
Yep.
Teams systems.
But yeah, at one point I'd like to, once this thing kind of, and you guys are kind of my guinea pigs for this, my beta users, but kind of getting a better idea of some of the ideas that you use, I'd love to get this up into, and I don't know how to do it at the moment, but I'll figure it out, but like a template within Planner or within Teams that you guys can grab this, and it makes it easier for, that the whole project management side of managing the development of a program. But anybody else, what about feedback? How do people go through, and do you dictate or kind of set expectations for feedback and revisions prior to the development phase? So much time, like we look at, all right, how do we take our PowerPoints and how do we make guidebooks out of it? Or how do we facilitate from this? Or how do we build out better training materials? But we never, and I don't think a lot of people talk about kind of the pre-work that goes into it. Or we talk about building design documents, but it's like, all right, you get your design document, now you build your guidebooks. And there's kind of this piece in the middle. So that's kind of what I wanted to look at. The last main piece I want to talk about is when we start looking at collaborating and communicating as we're going through and, in this getting, or how we define how we're going to collaborate and communicate as we go forward. So I'm going to flip back over to my handy dandy checklist. So in this section, I kind of called it teamwork, right? I like to lay out the roles everybody has, right? So in this case, assigning roles to the different team members. The one that I think, and maybe this isn't, maybe we're not contacting everybody, but knowing who it is, right? Like, who's the stakeholder? Who's the person that is out there that we're developing the training for, right? Maybe the stakeholder should only be contacted by the training manager or the project manager. That's great. That's where we can kind of put that information in the notes section, right? But having everyone listed, their contact information of emails, phone numbers, whatever those details are. But we've kind of got to play one location. We know everything that's in there, or let's say Scott's the one who's been developing, but takes a sabbatical or is out sick for a little while or goes on vacation. Somebody else can quickly take a look and see what who's all part of this, and you're not kind of bouncing around through different emails trying to find the contact information for people, or who all your subject matter experts are, right? And maybe in the notes section you're listing off the specific areas, especially if you're working with multiple subject matter experts, for different portions of your training development. But just capture all that information. Then we actually start looking at how are we actually going to collaborate, right? Are we developing, this with multiple developers, right? And so maybe this is where you define the roles, like Pat's going to be building out modules 1 and 2, and Nancy's building out modules 3 and 4, or you lay those groundworks, or listing off the different tools that we're going to be using. Like we're using, make sure you check, the team's channel or the planner about this on a daily basis so you can see where your tasks, or you load up your tasks. And again, just capturing those information. And the more we kind of go, and this, kind of ties into, LeaderGuide Pro, how LeaderGuide Pro manages our collection of templates. As there's, if there's specific things that happen every time, on whatever your, prep sheet checklist is, load up the stuff that always we always use Planner. There's always a Teams channel for a specific project or whatever that is. And then you've just captured it. And maybe now you're just giving a hyperlink to where that specific channel is for this specific project. Right? In the teamwork collaboration kind of idea as well is to talk about how you want to handle check-ins. How do we provide feedback, right? Capturing that information, right? Like we prefer all feedback to be provided as, comments done within the Word document, or, we're going to meet weekly or daily in a Zoom meeting to go over each of these items. Again, just spell it out so that there's no one's confused. We've set a strong foundation on the whole before we even get into the development process. And then the last item is really, let's talk about where's everything supposed to be located, right? How do we all make sure that if I'm building it and Gemma's building and Scott and Nancy and everyone who's doing it, Melinda, that we all have the ability to go through and find the information, capture that there, right? Give them a place, if there's specific passwords, or obviously you probably don't want to type down passwords, but you get the idea of what I'm kind of talking about. Capture it so everyone knows where to go. If we're not reinventing the wheel here, it's just common sense, but it's one that quickly gets overlooked. And I'm not saying, you guys, that people don't have common sense. It's just one that we've got so many different things that we do on a daily basis. As stated by that 75% of people who lack the time, resources, budget to do their jobs, you're multitasking, you're doing all these things, and we can quickly overlook some of the simple steps we can take that can make our lives that much easier. So just, thinking about your whole your process is an important thing to do, and kind of define it. I'm not saying this is, our checklist is the be all end all, like follow this completely. I think the concepts behind it, I think every area in here is important, but your process better than us, or you have a better idea of what you want your process to be. So define it. Use this as the foundation to build what you need to make sure you're building successfully. So today is definitely it's a shorter session, and my goal is to actually keep these about 30 minutes versus the hour. Just too much information going out. But with this being what it is, I'd love to, as you start building these out yourself or putting these into play, let us know some of the things that you're adding in that maybe we didn't think about in this. The more as a group, as the L&D community can help us, talk about the ways they build stuff, we can help support each other and then get better at what we do in less time, which hopefully means you guys get home earlier, you're able to do what you want to do, and then hopefully even get paid more money. If the only thing you guys take away from today, like the one thing, is it's that how do you go about auditing your existing data? Right? This is, I think, this will be the biggest jumping off point to help your development process, is the more we can figure out how to take advantage of the work that's already been done and repurpose it into the voice of our current audience, so that we don't have to recreate the wheel, can build in less time, take advantage of other subject matter experts who may be no longer with the company, and now you can build with what build off what was already done and make it better. So figure out how to make sure you are bringing in outside material or content that's already been built to supplement or enhance what you need to do going forward. Well, with that, I will give you 27 minutes back into your day. Enjoy your lunch or your early morning, your mid-morning tea, and we will see you all soon.